Wesley Carter had led hundreds of meetings in his life, but on this particular morning, something inside him shifted before anyone in the sleek Atlanta boardroom realized it. It wasn't loud, it wasn't visible, but it was real enough to make his hand freeze halfway through adjusting his cufflink. A small detail, one no one else could possibly care about, had been haunting him since he stepped out of his car. Mira's plush bunny was still in the back seat. It sat there, tipped over on its side, the worn pink ear folded in the exact way she always smoothed it before falling asleep. He had meant to bring it with him after dropping her off yesterday. She'd been too tired, too weak from another round of treatment to remember it. He had promised her he'd bring it next time. He forgot. Now, as the board members discussed quarterly projections and international rollout plans, Wesley couldn't hear a single voice clearly. His world, usually sharp, organized, and controlled, felt like it was slipping through his grasp one tiny inch at a time. "Mr. Carter," someone asked from across the table. He blinked, lifting his gaze, as if torn from somewhere far away. 12 executives stared at him. Charts filled the digital screens. The skyline glittered beyond the windows. Everything looked exactly the same as every high-pressure morning in his career, but nothing felt the same. His voice didn't come immediately. He nodded once, pretending to process a comment he hadn't heard. "Continue," he managed. But the words didn't hold their usual command. Inside, something tugged, tight and unforgiving. He saw Mira's face from yesterday, the way she held his hand with fingers that felt lighter than they used to, the way she asked, "Daddy, will you stay a little longer today?" He had stayed, but he had left without the bunny. A tiny, innocent thing, but it cut through him now like a blade. As the meeting dragged on, anxiety pressed harder against his chest, building into a pressure he could no longer disguise. He reached into his jacket pocket to silence his vibrating phone. He had already turned off sound, but when he saw the name on the screen, every drop of color drained from his face. Children's Hospital of Atlanta. His thumb trembled. "Not again. Please? Not today." He didn't answer. Not here. Not in front of them. He pressed the red button and tried to refocus, but his pulse wouldn't settle. Moments later, the phone vibrated again. Same number. His breath stuttered. He lowered the phone into his lap, hiding it from everyone's view. His chest tightened so sharply it felt like a warning from somewhere deep within. Climax A. The emotional trigger hit him without mercy. A sudden flash of memory. Eliana standing in their small apartment doorway, one hand resting protectively on her belly, her eyes glassy with tears as she said, "You can't just walk away from them, Wesley." He had walked away anyway. That memory, that voice, that moment. It speared straight into him now, more forcefully than it ever had. He nearly gasped from the pressure of it. "Mr. Carter, are you all right?" a board member asked carefully. The question snapped the last thin thread holding his composure. Wesley stood so suddenly, the chair legs screeched across the polished floor. "I'm sorry," he said, voice taut. "I have to step out." No explanation. No hesitation. He grabbed his phone and left the room before anyone could respond. His heartbeat hammered in his ears as he moved through the hallway, each footstep quicker than the last. When he reached a quiet corner away from glass walls and curious eyes, he answered the phone with a tight breath. "This is Wesley." Dr. Lee's voice came through, calm but strained. "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry to call again. We need you here as soon as possible." That was Climax B. The external disruption that shoved him past his breaking point. "How bad?" Wesley asked, unable to keep the crack out of his voice. "We'll talk when you arrive," she said softly. His stomach dropped. He didn't need more details. He knew that tone. He had heard it once when they first discovered the disorder. He had heard it again after failed treatments. That tone meant urgency. That tone meant they were running out of options. He ended the call and broke into a near run toward the elevator. Inside the glass lift, his reflection stared back at him. A man in a $1,000 suit with fear in his eyes. A man with a city under his leadership, but powerless to save the one person who mattered most. As the elevator descended, Wesley pressed his fist to his lips, desperate to steady his shaking breath. Outside, Atlanta's noise swallowed him whole. Cars honked. People crossed busy sidewalks. Construction cranes lifted steel beams above the skyline. The world moved fast. Yet he felt suspended in something heavy and suffocating. His driver opened the car door the second he approached, sensing the urgency. "Hospital," Wesley said, barely getting the words out. "Yes, sir." The engine roared to life. They pulled into traffic, a blur of lights reflecting on the windshield. Wesley stared out the window, but he didn't see the sleek high-rises or luxury storefronts. None of it mattered today. Not the prestige of his title, not the polished reputation he'd spent years building. Wealth couldn't shield him. Influence couldn't calm him. All he could see in his mind was Mira's small smile. Fading, he dug his fingers into his thigh, trying to ground himself. Guilt rose like a tide, cold and relentless. He should have been ready. He should have brought the bunny. He should have been holding her hand right now, instead of sitting in traffic. What if she gets worse before I arrive? He whispered under his breath. His driver glanced at him through the rearview mirror, but said nothing. Wesley leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tight. His thoughts spun in directions he refused to voice. If you've ever faced a moment that shook the ground beneath you, even if no one around you noticed, take a second to like this video so more people can find stories that remind them they're not alone. And feel free to comment where you're watching from. Someone else might be watching from the same place. The traffic thickened as they crossed Midtown. Every red light felt like a personal attack. Every slow-moving car ahead made him grit his teeth. He tapped his heel anxiously on the floor, a nervous habit he hadn't done since he was young. He was supposed to be the man who always had the answers. Now he couldn't think of a single solution. Not one. Except the one he feared most. He closed his eyes. Eliana's face appeared again. Not angry, not crying, just waiting. The way she had looked at him years ago, silently pleading for him to choose his family. He had failed her then. Was he about to fail Mira now? A cold dread seeped into him. Atlanta's cityscape flashed by the window, symbols of achievement he once cared about. The corporate tower he owned a floor in, the high-end restaurant where he used to take clients, the luxury condos that marked success. None of it meant anything now, because fear strips a man of all illusions, because love exposes every weakness, because sometimes life pushes you back toward the very door you once slammed shut. The hospital came into view, and with it, a truth Wesley had been avoiding for years. A truth rising through the cracks of his perfect life. To save his daughter, he might have to face the woman he abandoned and the children he never met. Welcome to Mr. Stephen Stories, where powerful life lessons are shared through unforgettable storytelling. If you're new here, we're glad to have you. Subscribe and join us for more inspiring stories that motivate, uplift, and open the mind. And don't forget, comment the time and where you're watching this story from. The automatic doors of the children's hospital slid open, and Wesley stepped inside with a pace that suggested he was barely holding himself together. The bright lobby, decorated with colorful murals and cheerful signs meant to comfort young patients, only made the fear in his chest feel sharper. He had walked these halls dozens of times over the past months, but today something felt different. He felt different. His footsteps echoed as he passed a cluster of parents in waiting chairs, some with worried faces, others with exhausted ones. He wondered briefly how many of them were living out their worst nightmare, too. For the first time in his life, Wesley felt a kinship with complete strangers, mothers and fathers fighting invisible battles just like him. When he reached the pediatric wing, he saw Dr. Lee standing outside her office, reviewing a chart. She looked up the moment she sensed his approach. Her expression, gentle, yet edged with seriousness, told him she had been waiting for him. "Wesley," she greeted quietly, gesturing toward her office. "Come in." The way she said his name made his stomach churn. Inside, the office was warm but clinical. A small desk, soft lighting, children's artwork pinned to a corkboard, a wall clock ticking too loudly. Wesley stood instead of sitting, hands clenched, waiting for the blow he knew was coming. Dr. Lee closed the door behind them. "I didn't want to discuss this over the phone," she began softly. "The new labs came in an hour ago." Wesley swallowed hard. "How bad is it?" She didn't sugarcoat. "The treatments have slowed the progression, but they're no longer holding. The disorder is advancing faster than we expected." He felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. Dr. Lee continued, "We need a donor, and soon. Without one, we're running out of time." Her voice didn't waver, but her eyes held a compassion that pierced him. "Have you found anyone?" Wesley asked, though he already knew the answer. He braced himself. Her head. No matches in the registry, not even partial ones, that could work with risk management. "We've been searching non-stop." A silence settled between them, heavy, suffocating. He lowered himself into the chair across from her, elbows on his knees, his head bowing as if a weight had been placed directly on his spine. I knew this was coming, he murmured. I hoped we'd have more time. I understand, Dr. Lee replied gently, but we're still trying. We won't stop. There are cases where donors appear later in the process. For now, our focus is keeping Mira stable and buying her as much time as possible. Wesley dragged a hand through his hair, a gesture he'd been repeating more and more lately. The polished executive who once walked confidently into any room felt irrelevant here. He wasn't the EO in this moment. He wasn't the man who could fix problems with strategy, influence, or money. He was just a father who was terrified. I keep asking myself what else I can do, he whispered. I'd give anything. My marrow, my organs, my life, if it would help. But I can't even do that. Dr. Lee nodded. Parents are rarely compatible donors in this specific condition. It's not your fault. But Wesley felt fault everywhere. Guilt crept through him like cold air. Guilt over every moment he wasn't here. Guilt over every decision that pulled him away. Guilt over walking away from Eliana years ago, long before Mira ever existed. He leaned back, eyes burning. Is she in pain today? Some discomfort, Dr. Lee said, her tone soothing but honest. She's been asking for you. Those 5 words cracked something inside him. I need to see her, he murmured. Dr. Lee nodded and led him into the hallway. They walked in silence, their footsteps soft against the polished floor. Wesley's heart thudded harder the closer they got. The pediatric wing smelled faintly of soap and something sweet. Bubblegum hand sanitizer, maybe. Nurses moved quietly from door to door. A faint cartoon played from one of the rooms. Life went on in this hospital, even as fear clouded his vision. When they reached Mira's door, Wesley paused to steady his breathing. He pushed gently and stepped inside. The room was dimmer than the hallway. Mira sat propped against pillows, her small body swallowed by a patterned blanket. She turned her head slowly, and when her hazel eyes landed on him, she smiled, a soft, tired smile that made his heart ache. "Daddy," she whispered. Wesley crossed the room quickly but carefully, sitting beside her and taking her hand. Her fingers were cool, too cool. He warmed them between his palms. "Hey, pumpkin," he said, forcing his voice steady. "How are you feeling?" She lifted one shoulder. Tired. After a moment, she added, "Did you bring the bunny?" The question hit him like a punch. "I left it in the car yesterday," he admitted, "but I'll bring it tonight. I promise." She nodded slowly, accepting this without disappointment, because Mira never made him feel worse than he already did. That kindness, that innocence, only deepened his pain. Wesley rested his hand on her forehead. She looked paler today. Shadows clung under her eyes. Her breathing seemed shallower. He blinked away the burn of emotion, gathering behind his eyes. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Am the first gonna get better?" Her voice was tiny, hopeful, but scared. He swallowed hard. A father is supposed to answer confidently. He couldn't lie, but he couldn't break her spirit either. So he held her hand tighter and said, "We're doing everything we can, and I'm right here with you. Every step." She nodded, her gaze drifting to the 4 in her arm. He watched her chest rise and fall, slow and fragile. He had built a life where everything looked strong and unshakable, but nothing, not a title, not success, could shield him from this moment. When Mira drifted into sleep, Wesley quietly stood and stepped out of the room. He let the door close softly behind him. He lasted maybe 5 steps. Then he leaned against the wall, pressed a hand over his mouth, and finally let the tears come. Silent, raw, undeniable. This, the collapse he'd been holding back for weeks. Maybe. A nurse walked by, noticed, and gently continued on without speaking. Wesley appreciated that more than he could express. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand and drew a shaky breath. Another image of Eliana flickered through his mind. The last time he saw her, the pain in her eyes, the babies she carried. He straightened slowly. If the registry couldn't save Mira, if he couldn't save her, there was only one possibility left. One he had avoided out of shame and fear. But now, fear of losing Mira overshadowed every other fear he had ever known. Wesley walked slowly down the quiet hallway, one hand trailing along the cool railing, his breath still uneven from the moment he'd fallen apart outside Mira's room. He needed a place where no one would see him. No doctors, no nurses, no sympathetic glances. He needed to be alone with the truth, pressing against his ribs. He turned into a small family waiting room, tucked at the end of the corridor. It was empty. A vending machine hummed in the corner, and a row of chairs lined the wall. Wesley chose the seat closest to the window, though the blinds were half closed, letting in only thin slices of light. He sat forward, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped tight. Everything inside him felt frayed. "I can't lose her," he whispered to no one. His voice broke. He leaned back and pressed a hand over his eyes, trying to steady his mind. But the silence only made everything louder. Every thought sharpened, cutting through the protective layers he had tried to build around himself. Mira needed a donor. No match existed. Time was slipping away. He had known this moment might come, but the reality of it, this closeness to losing her, tightened his chest until breathing felt like effort. A soft knock against his mind, an old memory, pushed its way in without permission. He tried to push it away. It pushed back harder. Eliana. She appeared in his memory as vividly as if she had just stepped into the room, standing in their small apartment foyer years ago, wearing a simple sundress, her curls pulled back, her face glowing and terrified all at once. Her hands were resting on the curve of her belly. 2 lives inside her. 2 children he created. 2 children he walked away from. He sucked in a breath and leaned forward again, bracing his hands on his thighs. Her voice echoed inside his head, clear as day. "Wesley, they need you. I need you." He had ignored it then. He had convinced himself He had valid reasons. Fear, pressure, pride, uncertainty. But those reasons felt hollow now. They didn't comfort him anymore. They didn't excuse anything. He dropped his head, eyes closed tightly. "I failed them," he whispered. "I failed her." His chest ached in a way that felt unfamiliar. Not the sharp panic he felt for Mira, but a deep, heavy sorrow that had been building quietly for years, waiting for him to stop running long enough to face it. A quiet truth surfaced inside him. If the twins truly existed, they were healthy. If fate hadn't taken them from this world, they might be Mira's last chance. He exhaled shakily and ran both hands over his face. He hadn't thought of them in detail for a long time. Not because he didn't care, but because caring hurt too much. Every time he pictured Eliana, one hand on her belly, tears in her eyes, he saw the worst version of himself reflected back. Sometimes guilt makes people look away from what they should be looking directly at. He had looked away for years. Now, forced into a corner he never imagined, he let himself remember. He remembered how Eliana told him she was pregnant. He remembered the fear that chased him out of their marriage. He remembered the sound of her voice cracking when he walked out the door. He remembered refusing to ask about the birth, refusing to face the truth, because the truth would demand accountability. He had been a coward, a young man running from responsibility and emotional burden, a man who let pride drown love. Now, facing a nightmare he couldn't escape, there was no more room for lies, especially the lies he told himself. He lifted his head and stared at the ceiling, his jaw tightening with a painful realization. My daughter is dying, and the only people who might save her are the same people I abandoned. It wasn't a poetic thought. It wasn't dramatic. It was a brutal truth, one that landed with a weight heavier than anything he had ever carried. His throat tightened again, but he fought to keep control this time. He couldn't fall apart twice in the same hour. He needed clarity, strength, direction. He stood and walked toward the window, pulling the blinds open halfway. A muted view of the city stared back at him. Cars flowing through streets, office buildings stretching upward, the hum of life continuing without pause. It hit him suddenly how small he felt within all this. How powerless. How human. For years, people looked at Wesley Carter and saw a man who had everything: money, influence, confidence, the sharp mind of a successful executive. But none of that mattered here. Wealth couldn't change genetics. Power couldn't redraw the past. He pressed his fingertips to the glass, taking in a slow breath. He didn't know if the twins were healthy. He didn't know if they lived nearby or across the country. He didn't know if they looked like him. He didn't know if they looked like her. He didn't know them at all. The thought nearly brought him to his knees. But one thing he knew with absolute certainty: he could not let shame stop him now. He dropped his hand from the glass and straightened his shoulders. He had begged investors. He had fought for deals worth billions. He had built a company from the ground up. He had convinced entire teams to follow him into impossible ventures. But none of that demanded the courage he needed now. This required a different kind of strength. The strength to walk back into a life he once ran from. To knock on a door he had no right to approach. To face a woman whose heart he broke. To stand in front of children who might look into his eyes and see a stranger. He closed his eyes, letting the truth settle, letting himself accept what must be done. When he opened them again, something had changed. Not confidence, not certainty, but resolve. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more weight than any speech he had ever given. "Eliana, I'm coming." He didn't know how she would respond. He didn't know if she would curse him, slam the door, or turn away in tears. He didn't know if the twins would want anything to do with him. He didn't know if they could save Mira, but he knew this. He would not run again. Not now. Not ever. This time, he would face everything he'd avoided. This time, he would walk toward the pain, not away from it. This time, he would fight for all three children, Mira, and the twins he had never met. He stepped out of the waiting room with a steadying breath. A gentle CTA rises here. Soft, emotional, natural. If you've ever had to face a truth you ran from, take a moment to subscribe. Stories like these remind us that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Go back and fix it." And if you're watching right now, tell us the time and where you're listening from. You never know who else might be watching from the same place. Wesley took one last look in the direction of Mira's room. Then he walked toward the elevator, toward the past, toward the woman he once loved, toward the children he had never held, toward the only hope his daughter had left. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Eliana's bedroom, casting familiar warmth across the space she had crafted with intention and care. The room was simple. No designer furniture. No sharp lines or cold glass like the offices Wesley lived in. Instead, soft colors, thrifted picture frames, and a quilt her mother stitched years ago covered the bed. Everything in her home felt lived in, touched, held. Eliana stretched slowly, listening for movement from the twins' room down the hallway. Usually one of them was already awake, either humming quietly while arranging toys or tiptoeing clumsily toward the kitchen in hopes of snagging breakfast early. This morning, she heard low whispers. A small smile tugged at her lips. She moved through the modest home she rented in a black, middle-class neighborhood outside Atlanta, where people waved from porches, where lawn chairs sat out all year, and where neighbors still knocked to borrow sugar. The houses weren't new, but they held stories. Cookouts, childhood memories, church weekends, and community events that stitched everyone together. As she approached the twins' room, she heard their soft chatter grow louder. "Mommy's coming," the boy whispered. "I know," the girl giggled. Eliana pushed the door open, gently. The room burst with color. Hand-painted stars on the walls, stacks of books, tiny sneakers lined by the window. The twins immediately brightened when they saw her. "Good morning," she said warmly. They scrambled into her arms, wrapping themselves around her waist in a familiar embrace. Their laughter filled the room in a way nothing else could. After a few moments, she stepped back to look at them properly. They were growing fast, too fast. She saw a bit of herself in their expressions, their smiles, even their stubborn streaks. Every day, they reminded her how much life had changed since the moment she decided to raise them alone. "You too hungry?" she asked. They nodded dramatically, as if they hadn't eaten in days. In the kitchen, she moved with easy rhythm. She poured batter into the skillet, the smell of pancakes warming the air. The twins set the table with mismatched plates and cups, something they insisted on to make breakfast happy, as they once put it. Across the street, a woman, sweeping her porch, called out, "Morning, baby." Eliana smiled through the open window. "Morning, Miss Darlene." She had become part of this neighborhood's fabric, without ever trying. Church aunties called to check on her. Neighbors watched the twins when she worked late shifts. People invited her over for Sunday dinners, even when she insisted she didn't want to bother anyone. Wesley had no idea what this world looked like, and Eliana rarely let herself think about his. By the time breakfast was done, she helped the twins pack their backpacks, brushing stray crumbs off their shirts. She tied shoelaces, smoothed hair, and kissed their foreheads before walking them to the car. The morning air carried the scent of fresh grass and someone grilling early for a weekend gathering. She buckled the kids into their seats, jumping slightly, when one of them said, "Mama, you look tired." Eliana paused, then kissed their cheeks again. "All right. Mommy just stayed up late with work." Work, her steady anchor, the thing that kept their life moving. She worked long shifts at the clinic, sometimes filling in for coworkers, sometimes taking overtime because the twins needed school supplies or the car needed repairs. It was draining, but she met each day with quiet determination. After dropping the kids off at school, Eliana headed to the clinic. The morning rush had begun. Parents with toddlers, elderly patients needing routine checks, workers stopping by before their shifts. Nurse Johnson waved her over. "Girl, you ready for another long day?" Eliana smiled weakly, but sincerely. "Aren't I always?" The clinic wasn't fancy. It wasn't polished, like the medical facilities Wesley brought Mira to. But it was a place filled with community, people who trusted her, elders who told her stories about the old neighborhood, mothers who leaned on her for advice. As she checked charts, guided patients, and offered calm reassurance, she slipped easily into her role. Helping people grounded her. It gave her purpose. It reminded her she wasn't defined by the painful part of her past. Still, now and then, during the quiet seconds between tasks, her mind wandered to moments she tried not to revisit. The night Wesley walked out, the way she called his name as he closed the door, the weight of carrying 2 babies alone, the strength she had to build from scratch. Those memories didn't sting the way they once did, but they lived deep inside her, like small reminders of what she survived. During her lunch break, she stepped outside into the mild afternoon air. She sat on the bench near the clinic entrance, sipping water while watching kids play in the distance. She knew she had created a good life for the twins, one filled with stability, love, and community. But sometimes, in moments like this, she felt the echo of something missing. Not love. She had plenty of that with her children. But companionship, a partner, a safe place to rest. She rarely allowed herself to long for it, but the feeling still visited her, occasionally, like an unexpected guest. Her phone buzzed. A reminder to pick the twins up early for their after-school program. She stood, smoothing her scrubs, and went back inside to finish her shift. Later in the afternoon, she arrived at the school. The twins ran to her, waving their drawings in the air, one of a rainbow, the other of their home. "You drew our house?" she asked. They nodded proudly. She studied the drawing. 3 figures stood in front of the home. Eliana in the center, the 2 kids on each side. Her chest tightened in a tender, bittersweet way. They never added a 4th figure. They never asked why. They simply accepted their life as it was. Back home, the twins changed into comfortable clothes, while Eliana started dinner. The house smelled of rice and chicken as she stirred the pot, humming softly to herself. The kids played in the living room, building towers with their blocks. Every corner of the home reflected her effort. Laundry folded on the couch, a stack of homework sheets on the dining table, framed drawings by the twins lining the hallway. This, the world she built. A world without Wesley. A world filled with love, but not without loneliness. When she finally settled on the couch with a cup of herbal tea, the twins curled against her, one on each side. She wrapped her arms around them, their warmth grounding her. She kissed the tops of their heads and whispered, "I'm right here." Always. Outside, the street lights flickered on. Inside, the quiet wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. She did not know that Wesley, at that exact moment, was driving back toward a past he tried to bury. And she had no idea her world was about to shift. But tonight, she simply held her children close, steady, resilient, and unaware of what tomorrow might bring. Evening settled gently over the neighborhood, softening the sounds of the day. Children's laughter faded as parents called them inside. Car doors closed, porch lights clicked on, and the slow hum of life shifted into its nighttime rhythm. For Eliana, these were the hours she cherished, the calm between the day's responsibilities and bedtime routines. After dinner, she washed dishes while the twins worked on homework at the table. They asked occasional questions, simple math problems, spelling help, each one drawing a patient smile from her. When the plates were clean and the counters wiped, she joined them, checking their work with quiet pride. "Mom, look," the girl said, holding up a drawing she had colored. "It's our house again." Eliana studied it. The same 3 figures stood out front. The same colors, the same simplicity. Something in her tightened, but she kept her voice warm. "It's beautiful," she said, brushing her daughter's cheek. "You're getting really good at this." When homework ended, the twins hurried to the living room to watch their favorite show. She let them wind down while she folded laundry. Shirts, socks, tiny jeans, all familiar pieces of the life she had built with steady hands. By 8 o'clock, The show ended, and bedtime began. They brushed their teeth, argued briefly about who got to choose the bedtime story, then settled beside her as she read aloud from an old children's book. Her voice softened with each page, and eventually the twins leaned into her, eyes heavy. She kissed their foreheads, tucked each of them in, whispered their goodnight prayers with them, and turned off the lights. The house grew quiet. Eliana walked into the living room, picking up stray toys before stepping onto the porch. She carried her mug of warm tea with her, wrapping both hands around it for comfort. The porch swing creaked softly as she lowered herself into it. Night air brushed against her skin, warm, with a hint of chill that came with the season. A few houses down, she could hear someone playing old soul music. Fireflies dotted the yard, blinking lazily. This was her time to breathe. No customers at the clinic. No paperwork. No rush. Just the stillness of a life she had molded with care. She sipped her tea and leaned back, letting the swing rock gently. Her thoughts drifted, not to painful memories, but to the small victories she'd accomplished over the years. The twins' birthdays, their first day of school, the night she finally saved enough to buy a reliable car, the moment she was promoted at the clinic. Everything she accomplished came with effort, and yet she found a quiet pride in knowing she had done it on her own. But still, sometimes the loneliness crept in. Sometimes she wondered what it would feel like to share her burdens with someone. Sometimes she wondered what her life might have looked like if things had gone differently. She rarely let her mind wander to Wesley anymore. It was safer not to. That part of her life was boxed away, carefully sealed. Thinking about it too long brought a heaviness to her chest she didn't want to revisit. She doing fine now. Her children were thriving. She had peace, but peace didn't stop memories from tapping on the door of her mind when she was tired. Tonight was one of those nights. She looked at the sky, thinking of the woman she used to be, the young bride full of dreams, believing that love could withstand everything. She remembered how she once imagined a future filled with laughter, shared plans, and the excitement of raising children together. Those thoughts didn't bring tears anymore, but they still carried weight. As she finished her tea, she set the mug on the small side table beside the swing. She reached for her phone, mostly to check the time, but a notification flashed on the screen. A news alert. She tapped it lightly. A headline appeared. Atlanta Tech CEO Wesley Carter expands charity efforts for Children's Hospital. Her breath caught. She froze. His name, his face, his world, so distant from hers, now filling her screen. A photo of him at a press conference appeared beneath the headline. He was speaking into a microphone, wearing one of his tailored suits, his expression serious and focused. Her stomach tightened. She hadn't looked at him in years. He looked older now, lines around his eyes, a calmer expression, a heaviness that wasn't there before. His once youthful confidence had been replaced by something quieter, something she couldn't quite define. She scrolled, skimming the article. It mentioned a hospital initiative, a personal motivation behind his donation, and a reference to him being a devoted father. She blinked. A devoted father. He had a child. Her fingers hovered over the screen. For a moment, she debated closing the article. But something inside her urged her to keep reading. The paragraph described how the loss of his wife had shaped his commitment to the hospital. Eliana swallowed hard. So he had loved again. So he had lost again. And he had a daughter. She sat very still, absorbing that, not with bitterness, but with an unexpected ache she could not name, a mixture of sadness, confusion, and something deep and unresolved. A breeze lifted the hem of her t-shirt, carrying the faint scent of someone grilling nearby, but the world around her felt distant now. Her pulse quickened. Why did seeing him still affect her? She didn't want it to. Not after everything. Not after she built a life free of the chaos he left behind. She locked her phone, placing it beside her on the swing. But the image of him lingered in her thoughts, his hand on a podium, his eyes focused and worried, his expression older, worn. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. She told herself not to think too much. It was just an article. People from the past appear sometimes. That didn't mean anything would change. But tonight, the memories rose higher than usual. Only shadows, no vivid scenes, but enough to stir emotion. The hurt of him walking away. The effort it took to keep going. The fear of raising 2 babies alone. The confusion of understanding someone so deeply and losing them so suddenly. She rubbed her forehead, whispering to herself, "You're okay. You're doing fine." The swing rocked gently, but her calm had shifted. Her thoughts were stormy and unsettled. A car drove slowly down the street. Then another. She didn't look up. Her phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't a news alert. It was something else. Something that made her chest tighten in a way she had not felt in years. She stared at the screen. Her heart pulsed. She didn't know it yet. But the piece she had carefully constructed was about to tilt. Tonight, the past had begun to move, and soon it would arrive at her doorstep. The night had settled deep and quiet by the time Eliana finished tidying the living room. The twins were asleep, their soft breathing drifting faintly from down the hall. She moved with the slow, thoughtful rhythm of someone still shaken by old memories that refused to settle. The article she'd seen earlier kept replaying in her head. Wesley at a podium, calm but weary, his eyes carrying a heaviness she could not ignore. She tried to distract herself. She folded blankets on the couch. She picked up a stray crayon left on the floor. She wiped down the counter, even though it was already clean, but nothing pushed away the unsettled feeling that had crept inside her chest. By the time she finally turned off the lamp and headed toward her bedroom, she told herself firmly, "It's just a coincidence. A name. A headline. Nothing more." But the unease didn't leave, deepened. It lingered, and a moment later, it proved itself right. 3 slow knocks. echoed from the front door. Eliana froze mid-step. Her hand automatically moved to her chest, fingers pressing lightly as her heart thudded. No one knocked this late. Her mother would have called. Neighbors didn't visit unannounced. And the sound wasn't frantic, but steady, deliberate. Her first instinct was caution. Her second was fear. Her third was recognition. Somewhere deep in her spirit, before her mind caught up, something told her exactly who was on the other side of that door. She moved quietly toward the living room, careful not to make noise. She passed the twins' rooms, listening for any sign they had woken. They hadn't. She reached the door, hesitating. Another knock, softer this time. Eliana? A voice called from the other side, muffled but unmistakable. Her breath left her in a rush. She gripped the doorknob, steadying herself. For a moment, she closed her eyes, bracing for the wave of emotions she knew would hit her. Then she opened the door. There he was. Wesley stood on her porch, the dim light from the fixture above casting soft shadows across his face. He wasn't in one of his polished suits, though his clothes still looked expensive. Dark slacks, a button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His hair was slightly out of place, not in its usual flawless style, and his eyes looked tired, raw, and unbearably human. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Nearly a decade of separation hung between them like a wall made of ghosts, memories, and what-ifs. Eliana, he said again, voice low, almost apologetic. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the door. She didn't open it wider. She didn't invite him in. She stood there, steady, but guarded. What are you doing here? Her tone was calm, but a tension lived beneath it. Wesley swallowed hard. He looked like a man who had rehearsed 1,000 things to say, but forgotten them all the moment he saw her. I'm sorry to come like this, he began, but I didn't know what else to do. Her jaw tightened. This late at night? I've been driving around for an hour, he admitted quietly, trying to find the courage to knock. A sharp breath escaped her before she could control it. She hated that his vulnerability affected her. She hated that part of her heart still remembered how he used to look at her. She folded her arms across her chest. Why are you here, Wesley? He looked down for a moment, then met her eyes again, blue, troubled, and full of fear. It's about my daughter, he said softly. Eliana's expression shifted slightly. She didn't speak, waiting. She's very sick, he continued, voice shaking. She needs a bone marrow transplant. We haven't found a donor. Eliana's lips parted, but no sound came out. She had assumed the article's mention of a hospital initiative was charity work, not a reflection of a personal crisis. Wesley took a small step forward, catching himself when she stiffened. They tested me, he said. They tested everyone on my side. No one matches. And the registry, his voice cracked. Nothing. The porch light flickered gently in the breeze, illuminating the turmoil in his face. Eliana kept her gaze steady. I'm sorry she's sick. Truly. But I still don't understand what this has to do with me. He closed his eyes for a brief second, as if the answer physically hurt. I should have come sooner, he whispered. I should have reached out years ago. But Eliana? The doctors said the best chance for a child is a sibling. Her breath hitched. He forced the words out. Siblings with shared blood. Half-siblings, too. His voice trembled. Are twins? They might be her only chance. Silence fell between them. The kind of silence that holds weight, memory, truth, and heartbreak all at once. Eliana's throat tightened. She held the door as if were the only thing keeping her upright. You have no right, she said quietly, her voice trembling with long-buried hurt. You have no right to show up after all this time and ask. I know, he cut in, tears filling his eyes. I know I don't deserve to ask. I don't deserve anything. But I'm desperate, Eliana. I'm begging you. Please. Her breathing grew uneven, and she turned her face slightly to regain composure. All these years, she murmured, voice breaking despite her effort to stay strong. You never called. You never wrote. You never checked if they were alive, if I survived the pregnancy, if... I was wrong, he choked out. I was weak. I made choices out of fear and pride, and I've regretted them every single day. But I can't change that now. I can't go back. I can only try to save my daughter. The wind rustled through the yard, carrying the faint sound of a neighbor's dog barking in the distance. Eliana's eyes glistened. Do you know what it took to raise them alone? Yes, he whispered. Or, at least, I know enough to know. I failed. All of you. His voice cracked fully. But please, if there's even a chance one of them could save her, I had to come. Even if you never forgive me. Her hand trembled on the door. Her heart ached for her children, for herself, and maybe even for him. He lowered his head, tears spilling freely. I'm not asking for us. I'm not asking for a second chance. I'm just asking you to give her a chance to live. The porch light flickered again, casting a soft glow around them. Eliana closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the collision of past and present. When she opened them, her voice was steadier, but full of pain. I need time, she whispered. Wesley inhaled shakily, nodding through his tears. That's all I'm asking. She stepped back slowly and closed the door, not with anger, but with the weight of someone carrying years of unresolved emotion. Behind the door, she pressed her forehead against the wood, her breath trembling. Outside, Wesley remained still on the porch, whispering, "Thank you." But inside the house, the only words echoing through Eliana's mind were the ones she had barely managed to say, "Give me time." The morning sunlight crept gently across the living room floor, slipping through the blinds in quiet stripes. Eliana stood in the kitchen, her fingers wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. She hadn't slept. She barely blinked through the night, replaying Wesley's face on her porch. The tremor in his voice, the desperation she felt down to her bones. She kept hearing those words, if there's even a chance. I had to come. Now, she had to do something even harder. Tell the twins the truth. She wiped her palms on her jeans. Her breath wavered, but she squared her shoulders. The twins were in the living room, sprawled on the rug with a coloring book open between them. They were arguing lightly about which shade of blue belonged on the sky, her daughter insisting on bright turquoise, her son firmly defending a deeper shade. It was such a sweet, normal moment, the kind Eliana treasured. And it hurt, knowing she was about to disrupt it. "Baby? Sweetheart," she said softly. Both heads lifted at once, identical sparkles of curiosity in their eyes. Her son sat up straighter, and her daughter scooted closer, sensing something serious. "Come sit with me," Eliana said, patting the couch. They climbed beside her, one on each side, leaning into her warmth the way they always did. Her daughter rested her head on Eliana's arm. Her son tucked his knee under himself, like he was ready to run or listen, whichever the moment demanded. Eliana swallowed hard. "There's something important I need to tell you both." The twins exchanged a quick look, a silent sibling conversation she'd seen 1,000 times. They turned back to her, waiting. She breathed in, slowly. "This is about your father." The room went still, not in fear, more like surprise mixed with wonder. The word father wasn't foreign to them, but it wasn't familiar either. It lived somewhere in the background of their lives, an unanswered question they tiptoed around. Her son blinked up at her. "Our father?" "Yes," she said gently. "You know I haven't told you much about him. I wanted to wait until you were older, until I felt sure you were ready." Her daughter's voice was nothing more than a whisper. "Are we ready now?" Eliana cupped her cheek, feeling her tremble ever so slightly. "Yes, baby. I think you are." She steadied herself, heart pounding. "Your father's name is Wesley." Both children frowned softly, searching their memories. They didn't know the name. They had never heard her speak it. Her son tilted his head. Wesley? Carter? Hearing their last name from his mouth made Eliana's chest tighten. "Yes, Wesley Carter." Her daughter's eyes widened. "Like the man from the news thing you saw last night?" Eliana hesitated only a second. "Yes, the same." Her daughter's little hand grasped her arm. "Why was he here?" "You looked scared." Eliana pulled her close. "I wasn't scared of him. I was just surprised. I haven't seen him in a very long time." "How long?" her son asked quietly, watching her with careful eyes. She traced her thumb along the seam of the couch, grounding herself. "Since before you were born." The twins didn't move. They didn't breathe. Her son's voice wavered. "He left before we came." Eliana felt the sting at his phrasing. She didn't want guilt to shape their understanding. Not at this age. Not before she could give them the whole story in a way that didn't burden their hearts. So she told the truth, but gently. "He and I were going through something very hard back then," she said softly. "We didn't know how to talk to each other or how to fix things. And he He made choices that hurt all of us. Her daughter leaned in to her side. Did he hurt you? Eliana kissed the top of her head. He hurt my heart, but I healed. And you two helped me heal faster than anything. They nodded quietly, absorbing her words with the seriousness of children who understood more than adults usually assumed. Her son finally asked, "Why did he come now?" Eliana waited a moment, choosing her words. "Because he needs our help. His daughter, your sister, is very sick." The twins straightened instantly. "Sister?" her daughter repeated. Her son blinked hard, processing. "We have a sister." "Yes," Eliana said softly. "Little girl named Mira." For a moment, neither child spoke. They pictured a sister they'd never known, a girl who shared their father, but lived in a completely different world. Her daughter bit her lip. "Is she younger than us?" "She's the same age," Eliana replied. Her son stared at the floor. "Sick how?" Eliana wrapped an arm around him. "She needs a bone marrow transplant. And sometimes siblings, even half-siblings, can be the ones who help." The twins' eyes filled with something heartbreaking and pure, a mixture of compassion, worry, and curiosity. Her daughter whispered, "Is she going to be okay?" Eliana felt her throat tighten. "The doctors are trying very hard. They just need to find the right match." Her son looked up at her, brown eyes shining. "And that could be us?" "It could," she answered. "We don't know yet." A long silence settled over them, soft and fragile. Her daughter tugged gently on Eliana's sleeve. "Mom, is it bad that I feel sad for her, even though I don't know her?" Eliana shook her head, pulling her close. "No, baby. It means your heart is good." Her son exhaled shakily. "I feel mad too. Just a little, because he wasn't here. But also, I don't want a kid to be sick. Does that make sense?" She ran her hand through his curls. "It makes perfect sense. Feel whatever you feel. You don't have to pick just one emotion." He nodded slowly, then sat up taller. "If we can help her, we should." His sister nodded firmly beside him. "Yeah, she's still family." Eliana's eyes filled. Her children, her beautiful, resilient children, were showing the world the kind of hearts they had grown without even knowing their father. They weren't holding resentment or confusion as shields. They were offering compassion first. It humbled her. It moved her. It made her proud in ways she couldn't describe. She gathered them both into her arms. "You two are the bravest souls I've ever known." Her daughter whispered, "Will we get to meet him?" And her. Eliana took a breath. "Yes, soon. The doctors will need to test you both. And your father. He wants to be there when you come." The twins nodded slowly, taking this in. Her son rested his forehead against her shoulder. "Do we have to call him Dad?" "No," she said softly. "Call him whatever feels right. There's no rush. Let your heart choose in its own time." Her daughter exhaled in relief. Okay. Eliana held them for a long moment, breathing in the innocence and strength she'd spent 8 years nurturing. When they finally pulled back, her son asked, "When do we go?" "We'll go this afternoon," she said. "I'll be with you every step." Her daughter slipped her hand into Eliana's. "And Mira, she'll know we want to help her?" Eliana brushed a curl behind her ear. "Yes, she'll know." Both children nodded, quietly, bravely, resolutely. And for the first time since Wesley appeared at her door, Eliana felt something unexpected. Hope. A fragile, flickering thing, but real. The drive to the hospital felt longer than usual, even though the route was familiar. Eliana sat in the front seat, gripping the steering wheel, a little tighter than necessary. The twins sat behind her, unusually quiet. They normally filled car rides with chatter, small arguments, and bursts of imagination. Today, silence traveled with them. Her son tapped his shoe lightly against the floor mat. Her daughter traced shapes on the window with her fingertip. Both were thinking, processing everything she had told them that morning. At a red light, Eliana glanced at them in the rearview mirror. "You two okay?" Her son nodded. "Yeah, just nervous," her daughter whispered. "Me too." Eliana offered them a soft smile. "It's all right to feel that way. I'm right here." When they reached the hospital parking lot, the afternoon sun shimmered off the rows of cars. Families trickled in and out of the building, some hurrying, others walking slowly with uncertainty. The twins stepped out of the car, each holding one of Eliana's hands, their fingers warm and small in her palms. Inside, the lobby buzzed with low conversation and distant footsteps. The hospital smelled faintly of hand sanitizer and something clean but uninviting. It wasn't a comforting space, but it was one filled with hope for people who needed it. They approached the reception desk, where Eliana signed them in. As she finished, a familiar voice spoke from behind her. "Eliana!" She stiffened before turning. Wesley stood a few steps away, looking as if he hadn't slept either. His expression carried a mixture of worry and gratitude. His eyes shifted immediately to the twins. He froze. They froze. It was the first time he had ever truly seen them. And the resemblance, subtle but undeniable, hit him hard. Their eyes, their expressions, the way her son stood slightly in front of his sister like a protective shadow. For a moment, Wesley just stared, breath caught somewhere in his chest. Eliana cleared her throat gently. "Kids, this is Wesley." Her son looked at him first, steady and cautious. Her daughter held Eliana's hand tighter, but didn't look away. Wesley stepped forward slowly, as if afraid to frighten them. "Hi," he said softly. "It's very good to meet you." The twins exchanged a quick glance, communicating wordlessly, the way siblings do. Her daughter spoke first. Her son added, "Hi." His voice wavered, but stayed kind. Wesley's relief was visible. Even the smallest welcome meant more than he could say. Eliana watched the exchange quietly, her emotions mixed. Seeing Wesley face the children he'd never known stirred something complicated inside her. Hurt, anger, disbelief, but also a strange tenderness she didn't expect. He wasn't performing for them. He wasn't assuming a role. He looked genuinely undone. A moment later, Dr. Lee approached with his usual calm presence. "Good afternoon, everyone," he said, offering a reassuring smile. "I'm glad you're here. We'll handle everything gently." The twins stepped closer to Eliana. She rested a hand on each of their shoulders. "We'll start with a simple blood test," Dr. Lee explained. "Nothing scary. Just a quick draw to see if there's a match." Her son swallowed visibly. "Oh, it hurt?" "Only a pinch," Dr. Lee replied. "I'll talk you through the whole thing." Wesley crouched slightly, careful not to invade their space. "If you're scared, that's okay. I was scared the first time I had it done too." The twins looked at him, surprised. "You were scared?" her daughter asked softly. "A little," he admitted. "But being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you do the hard thing anyway." Her son's shoulders relaxed a little. Eliana watched him, conflicted. Wesley had always known how to talk to children. He just never had the chance to speak to his own. She breathed slowly, steadying herself. Dr. Lee led them to the testing room. Eliana walked beside the twins. Wesley stayed a few steps behind, giving them space. When they reached the room, the twins sat on the exam table while a nurse prepared the materials. "I'll go first," her son declared, lifting his chin. Eliana squeezed his hand. "I'm right here." The nurse worked quickly, explaining each step. The moment the needle touched his arm, he winced, but didn't pull away. "You okay?" Eliana whispered. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Just feels weird." Her daughter watched with wide eyes. When it was her turn, she took a deep breath and said, "I'm gonna be brave too." "You already are," Eliana said. Wesley stood near the wall, hands clasped together as if he were praying. He didn't speak, but every line of his body showed the tension and hope wrapped tightly inside him. When the tests were done, Dr. Lee thanked the twins warmly. "You did great," he said. "We'll have the results as soon as possible." On the way back to the waiting area, the twins walked beside Eliana again, but occasionally glanced back at Wesley, as if trying to understand the man they had learned so much about in such a short time. They all settled into seats. The hospital TV hummed softly in the background, playing a muted children's show. For a few minutes, no one talked. Then her daughter whispered to Wesley, "What's she like?" Wesley blinked. "Who?" "Our sister," she said. "Mira." Wesley's expression softened. "She's strong, brave. She likes drawing and animals. She has a little bunny she sleeps with." Her son leaned forward slightly. "A real bunny." "A stuffed one," Wesley said, with a quiet smile. She carries it everywhere. Her daughter nodded thoughtfully, then leaned into Eliana's side. Does she know about us? Wesley hesitated. Not yet. I wanted to wait until I knew if you wanted to meet her. Her son asked. Can we? Eliana looked at both of them. If you want to, we can. But only if you're ready. They nodded together. Wesley's eyes glistened faintly. He looked down before they could see. A nurse approached a moment later. Dr. Lee will come speak with you shortly about the next step. In the meantime, he said the children may visit Mira's room if you'd like. The twins exchanged excited, nervous looks. Wesley stood slowly, hands shaking. Are you sure? He asked Eliana quietly. She nodded once. Let them see her. It might help them understand. They walked toward Mira's floor. As they turned into the hallway where her room was located, Wesley's breath hitched. Eliana noticed, but said nothing. She knew this wasn't easy for him. At the door, he paused and spoke softly to the twins. You don't have to say anything. Just be yourselves. Her son nodded seriously. Her daughter held Eliana's hand more tightly. Wesley opened the door. The soft beeping machines filled the room. Mira lay in her bed, small and pale, but peaceful. Her plush bunny rested beside her. The twins stepped inside slowly, eyes wide. Her daughter whispered, She's tiny. Her son whispered back, She looks like she needs a hug. Eliana felt her heart twist at their innocence. Wesley approached Mira's bedside, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Mira, he whispered, I have some people who want to meet you. The twins stepped closer, hesitant, but drawn in by curiosity and compassion. For the first time, all 4 children connected, 1 sleeping, 3 watching with open hearts. And for a moment, despite everything, a quiet, unfamiliar wholeness filled the room. Eliana felt it. Wesley felt it. The twins felt it. A beginning? Fragile, but real. Mira stirred before fully waking, her tiny hand twitching near the plush bunny beside her. The soft beeping of the machines continued, steady and familiar. The twins stood a few steps from the bed, watching with wide eyes, curiosity mixed with a tenderness neither had expected to feel. Her daughter whispered, Is she waking up? Eliana nodded gently. Looks like it. Wesley moved closer to the bed, careful and slow, like someone stepping into a sacred space. Hey, sweetheart, he murmured. It's okay. I'm here. Mira blinked, her lashes fluttering as she adjusted to the light. Her eyes landed on Wesley first, and she smiled. Small, tired, but real. Then her gaze drifted past him, toward the twins. She frowned softly, confused. Daddy, who are they? Wesley turned toward the twins, then crouched slightly beside Mira. These are some friends who wanted to meet you. Mira's eyes lingered on them longer than a curious stare. Something in her expression softened, like she felt familiarity she couldn't explain. Children had a way of sensing connection before adults gave it words. Her daughter stepped forward first. "Hi," she said, voice tiny but warm. I'm here to see you." Mira's little brow lifted in interest. "You came to see me?" Her daughter nodded. "Yeah, I like your bunny." Mira brightened a little. "Her name is Honey." She hugged the plush animal closer. "She helps me sleep when I feel yucky." Her son chimed in gently. "She looks soft." "She is," Mira said proudly, holding the bunny up just enough for them to see. The twins exchanged a glance, one of those sibling looks full of silent agreement. Then her son asked, "Can we draw with you when you feel better?" Mira sat up a little, intrigued. "You draw?" "Yeah," her daughter said, smiling now. "We draw a. Mira stared at them with thoughtful eyes, as if studying something precious. Then she said, quietly, "I want you to come back tomorrow." Wesley's breath caught. Eliana saw the exact moment it happened, the way he swallowed, the way emotion flickered in his eyes. She understood his shock. Mira rarely asked for visitors. She barely spoke more than a few words some days. But here she was, reaching for connection with children she didn't yet know were tied to her by blood. The twins smiled at her, and her daughter said softly, "We'd like that." Mira giggled. Soft, breathy, fragile. A new sound in the room. A hopeful sound. Wesley wiped a tear quickly before anyone noticed. But Eliana saw. She always noticed nuances like that. Small gestures, broken edges, moments of vulnerability. Mira reached for Wesley's hand. "Daddy, it's okay now." He blinked hard. "What do you mean, baby?" "You look less sad," she whispered. He let out a shaky breath. "I'm feeling something good, something new." Mira nodded proudly, as if she had fixed something herself. Eliana's heart tugged. Watching Wesley with Mira, gentle, patient, earnest, reminded her of the man she once loved, before life cracked both of them open. Her son stepped a bit closer to the bed. "Do you like stories?" Mira nodded. "Daddy reads them. But sometimes I'm sleepy." "I can read slow," her son said, "so you don't get tired." Mira smiled shyly. "Okay." He pulled a children's book from the bag Eliana had brought, one the twins liked to carry around. He opened it and began reading in a soft voice, stumbling over a few words, but staying determined. Mira's eyes followed every page. Her daughter sat beside Eliana, resting her head against her arm. "She's sweet," she whispered. Eliana pressed a kiss to the top of her daughter's head. "She is, and she looks like him," her daughter added, glancing briefly at Wesley. Eliana nodded. "Little And a little like us? Her daughter asked gently. Eliana hesitated, then whispered, yes. Her daughter leaned into her, satisfied with the quiet truth. Across the room, Wesley knelt beside his son. No, the boy he hoped someday would call him something more than a name. He listened as the child read to Mira. His eyes filled with awe. He wasn't looking at them as strangers anymore. He was looking at them the way a man looks at something he lost long ago and never believed he'd see again. When the story ended, Mira clapped softly. Again? Her son laughed. Okay, but only one more. You gotta rest. Wesley's voice shook as he said, he's right, sweetheart. You need to save your energy. Mira turned her eyes toward the twins. You'll come back? Her daughter nodded immediately. Of course. Something shifted then. Something subtle but undeniable. The room felt warmer, lighter. For a moment, it didn't feel like a hospital. It felt like a family beginning to rediscover itself. The nurse entered quietly. Sorry to interrupt, but Mira needs a little break. Her vitals are good, but she needs rest now. Okay, her son said. We'll come back tomorrow. Mira hugged her bunny and whispered, Promise. We promise, her daughter replied softly. The twins stepped back carefully, not wanting to hurry the moment. Mira watched them the entire time, as if afraid they would disappear. Only after they waved goodbye did she settle back into her pillows. Wesley tucked her blanket gently around her. Rest now, love. When she closed her eyes, he stood. His shoulders trembled just slightly as he turned toward Eliana and the twins. Emotion radiated from him. Gratitude mixed with guilt and awe. The twins walked toward Eliana, slipping their hands into hers. She squeezed them gently, her heart full but conflicted. Wesley approached slowly. Thank you, he said, voice thick, for being here, for letting this happen. Her son stepped forward. She's really nice. Her daughter nodded. Yeah? She makes you feel like you should protect her. Wesley's voice cracked. That's how I felt since the day she was born. The twins looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Not with fear, not with confusion, with understanding. Eliana saw it happen. A shift, a softening. Wesley turned to Eliana next. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither looked away. There was no anger in her expression now, no sharp edges, only quiet, heavy truth. She likes them, Wesley whispered, more than anyone else she's met. Eliana took a slow breath. They like her, too. His eyes softened. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if they're the match. But today, his voice faltered. Today gave her something I couldn't. Eliana lowered her gaze, trying to steady herself. She didn't want to feel sympathy for him. She didn't want old wounds to pulse. But here he was, broken, trying, learning, and facing consequences he couldn't undo. She looked up again. "We'll take it one step at a time." Wesley nodded, relief washing through him. One step at a time. The twins tugged gently on Eliana's arms. "Can we come back tomorrow?" they both asked. Eliana smiled softly. "Yes, we will." The four of them left Mira's room together. Not as strangers anymore. Not as separate lives, but as something slowly forming. Something fragile, new, and full of possibility. A family rediscovering itself. The waiting room felt too quiet, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Afternoon light filtered through the tall windows, settling across the empty chairs and polished floors. The twins sat together near the corner with a small coloring pad the nurse had given them. They colored quietly. No arguing, no playful squabbles, just soft concentration shaped by nerves. Eliana sat beside them, hands folded in her lap, eyes shifting between the door and the clock on the wall. Waiting for test results was its own kind of ache, one that crawled beneath the skin and refused to let go. Across from her, Wesley sat forward with his elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly. He wasn't pacing, which surprised her. He wasn't speaking either. He just breathed in slow, uneven waves, eyes fixed on the floor. Every now and then he looked at the twins, and something vulnerable crossed his face. Hope, fear, wonder, all wrapped into one fragile expression. Eliana watched him, tearfully. A part of her still held the old hurt, but another part, the exhausted part of her that had raised children alone, felt something else. The quiet truth that people could break and still try to mend what they shattered. After a long stretch of silence, Wesley finally spoke. "I didn't sleep last night," he said softly, not looking up yet. Eliana replied with honesty rather than anger. "Neither did I." He lifted his eyes. They were tired, but open. "I kept thinking about them, about you, about everything I should have done." A knot formed in Eliana's chest, but she kept her voice steady. "Regret doesn't make anything easier." "I know," he murmured, "but admitting it is all I can do right now." Eliana studied him. She had once known every inch of this man. His voice, the way he spoke when he was nervous, the way he held tension in his shoulders. Now she saw all of that again, but changed. Worn more where? "Why didn't you try?" she asked quietly. "Why didn't you come back? Not even once." The question hung heavy between them. Wesley's jaw tightened, not in defensiveness, but in self-condemnation. "Because I thought I had already ruined everything. And the longer I stayed away, the harder it became to face what I'd done." She looked at him, expression unreadable. "I convinced myself you were better off without me," he continued. "You had every right to hate me. And I didn't think I deserved even the chance to apologize." She exhaled slowly. "You left me pregnant with twins. And you didn't even know if we survived the birth." He flinched, physically flinched. "I know," he whispered. "That will always be the worst decision of my life." A moment passed. Eliana turned slightly. watching the twins color. Their little heads leaned close together, whispering about which color belonged to the sky. Their innocence cut through the heaviness like a small, bright light. "They deserved better," she said softly. "Yes," he replied immediately. "They did." Another pause, this one different, less sharp, more raw. Wesley ran a hand over his face. "These past few days, watching them, hearing them, seeing how kind they are. Eliana, you raised them with so much love." She looked away, her throat tightening. "I did the best I could. You did more than that," he said gently. "You gave them everything." She swallowed, unsure how to respond. He continued, "And watching them with Mira, seeing how she reacted to them. I've never seen her light up like that. Ever." Eliana's heart softened, despite herself. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know I can't fix what happened. I know there are years missing. But if they let me, even in small ways, I want to be someone they can rely on." Eliana didn't answer immediately. A younger version of her, the heartbroken woman abandoned with newborns, wanted to snap back. A mother, the woman who learned strength with every diaper change and every sleepless night, wanted to protect her children from uncertainty. But the woman she had become, the one who faced her past last night on her porch, took a breath and said something honest. "They don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be truthful." Wesley looked at her, eyes stinging. "I can do, Al." She nodded, more to herself than to him. The silence that followed wasn't sharp, wasn't heavy. It was human. "Mom?" her daughter called softly. Eliana turned. "Yes, baby?" Her daughter held up a half-colored drawing. "Does this look right?" Eliana smiled gently. "It's beautiful." Wesley watched the exchange with quiet longing. His voice lowered. "They're incredible." Eliana nodded. "They saved me." Another long breath settled between them. Wesley spoke again, voice rough. "I want to say something, and you don't have to respond." She looked at him cautiously. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I'm grateful you're letting me be here. I know you didn't have to." Eliana gazed at him for a long moment. "This isn't about you and me anymore. This is about the children. All of them." He lowered his head. "I do." And she added quietly, "You're trying. I see that." Wesley's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if those words alone loosened a weight he had carried for years. Before either could speak again, Dr. Lee approached, clipboard in hand. The room stiffened. Eliana's stomach dropped. Wesley stood instantly, breath tightening. "Are results ready?" Eliana asked, voice trembling despite her attempt at calm. Dr. Lee nodded. "Yes, they're ready." The twins looked up at them, eyes wide and trusting. Wesley swallowed hard. "Please, just tell us." Dr. Lee took a breath, but he didn't speak yet. He gestured gently toward a more private consultation room. Let's step inside. Eliana reached for her children's hands. Wesley stood beside them. All five walked together, united by fear, hope, and the quiet truth that no matter what the results were, they had already become something closer than they were the day before. The consultation room felt smaller than the rest of the hospital. Just 4 chairs, a small table, and the soft hum of an air vent overhead. The twins sat between Eliana and Wesley, their legs dangling nervously from the seats. Dr. Lee closed the door gently behind him, holding a manila folder against his chest. No one breathed. No one moved. Even the twins, usually full of restless curiosity, sat still with wide, searching eyes. Dr. Lee took a steadying breath before he spoke. I know you've all been waiting anxiously. I want you to know we ran every test carefully, and we triple-checked the results. Wesley gripped the edge of his chair so tightly, his knuckles turned pale. Eliana held the twins' hands, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. Finally, Dr. Lee opened the folder. The match we needed. The match Mira desperately required. Time stopped. Was found. A sound escaped Wesley, part relief, part disbelief. His face crumpled, and he covered his mouth as his shoulders trembled. Eliana's breath caught, tears instantly breaking loose. The twins looked between them, confused but hopeful. Her son whispered, "Is it me?" Dr. Lee smiled gently. "Yes, you're the match." Her daughter gasped softly. Her son blinked several times, trying to process the weight of those words. Eliana pulled him close, kissing the top of his head with overwhelming gratitude and fear all tangled together. Wesley's tears fell freely now. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you. Thank you." Her son looked shyly at him. "I can help her. You can save her," Dr. Lee said softly. Her son swallowed hard and nodded. "Oh." Eliana pulled him into a hug, holding him tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "So proud. But we're going to talk through everything first. You'll know exactly what's happening, every step." He nodded against her shoulder, taking comfort in her calm. Dr. Lee continued gently, "This procedure is safe. Children recover quickly from it, but he'll be tired for a little while afterward. We'll take excellent care of him." Her daughter frowned slightly. "Will he hurt?" "It won't be too painful," Dr. Lee reassured her. "More like feeling very tired after a long day." She nodded. "Okay, I'll help him." Wesley wiped his face, turning toward the twins, with a softness Eliana had never seen from him before. Not this version of softness, one carved from gratitude and humility. "You're brave," Wesley said to her son, voice thick with emotion. "Braver than I've ever been." The boy blushed, looking at his feet. "I just want her to feel better." Wesley placed a hand over his heart. "You're giving her something no one else could." Eliana watched the moment silently. It moved her in ways she wasn't prepared for. Wesley wasn't the man she remembered. Time had reshaped him, softened the edges humbled him. And seeing him now, broken and grateful in front of their son, tugged at a part of her she thought had long gone quiet. Dr. Lee outlined the steps for the next few days: preparation, scheduling, and what the children would need emotionally and physically. The twins listened carefully. When the meeting ended, they stepped into the hallway together. Wesley stopped walking. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "Eliana?" She turned slightly. "Yes." He looked overwhelmed, like he didn't have enough words for the gratitude inside him. I don't know how to thank you, or him, or any of you." Eliana's voice softened. "This isn't about thanks. This is about saving a child." Wesley nodded, tears forming again. "I know, but it still matters." The twins tugged on Eliana's hands, pulling her attention. It was time to give them something lighter to hold on to. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the hospital garden, a small courtyard with benches, flowers, and a narrow path looping around a fountain. It wasn't big, but it was peaceful. Her daughter skipped stones along the edge of the fountain. Her son sat with Wesley on a bench, surprisingly at ease beside him. Eliana stood nearby, watching them. "Are you scared?" Wesley asked the boy gently. Her son shrugged. "A little." "That's normal," Wesley said. "I get scared, too." "You do?" Wesley smiled faintly. "More than people think." "But you know what helps?" "What?" "Talking about it. Letting someone listen." The boy thought about that. "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." The boy kicked his foot lightly against the bench. "I don't know you yet, but I want to try. Because you're Mira's dad, and she needs me." Wesley's throat tightened. "I would be honored if you tried." He paused, then added, voice trembling, "And I want to know you too." "Both of you." Her son nodded slowly, then leaned against Wesley's side just enough to show trust. Not fully, not immediately, but a beginning. Across the courtyard, her daughter held up a daisy. "Mom, look, it's perfect." Eliana smiled and walked toward her. The girl glanced at Wesley. "Can I give it to Mira?" Eliana touched her cheek. "Yes, baby. She'll love that." When they returned inside, they visited Mira again. She was awake this time, coloring in a small notebook. When the twins entered, her face brightened. Her daughter stepped carefully to Mira's bedside. "I brought you a flower." Mira's smile stretched wide. "For me?" "Yeah, so you don't feel alone." Mira held the daisy gently, almost reverently. "Love it." Her son sat beside them and showed Mira the small toy he carried in his pocket, a tiny plastic car. "This is my favorite," he said. "I'll let you borrow it." Mira gasped softly. "Really?" "Yeah, but give it back when you're better." She solemnly nodded. "I promise." Wesley watched his daughter be surrounded by children who were, without knowing the full truth, connected to her in the deepest way possible. He blinked hard several times, overwhelmed. Eliana saw him struggling and stepped closer. For once, she didn't keep distance. "You okay?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "I've never seen her this happy." "She needed connection," Eliana murmured. "Kids feel things we don't always say out loud." "She feels safe with them," Wesley whispered, voice cracking. "I think she always will." Their eyes met, soft, grateful, open, in a way neither expected. The moment held long enough to feel significant, but not long enough to break the fragile boundary between them. Later that evening, they walked toward the exit together. The twins trailed ahead, holding hands and chatting about which toy they wanted to bring Mira tomorrow. Wesley spoke softly beside Eliana. "I don't deserve this chance, but I'm grateful for every second." Eliana exhaled slowly. "We're doing this for the children. But yes, there's something healing about today." He nodded. "I felt it, too." Before they reached the door, her son turned and called, "Mom, can we come back in the morning?" Eliana smiled warmly. "Yes, baby, we will." Wesley looked at her again, emotion heavy in his eyes. "Thank you," he murmured, "for trusting me. Even a little." Eliana didn't offer a dramatic response. She didn't need to. She simply said, "Let's take it one day at a time." And for the first time, Wesley believed that maybe, just maybe, there was room in their future for redemption. Morning arrived far too quickly. Eliana barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her son lying in a hospital bed, Mira waiting on the other side of a sterile room, and Wesley pacing like a man trying not to fall apart. She forced herself to be steady. Her children needed that. But inside, fear pressed against her ribs like a weight she couldn't shake. When she went into the twins' room to wake them, she found her son already sitting up, legs crossed, holding his favorite stuffed dinosaur in his lap. He wasn't crying, but he wasn't smiling either. "Good morning, baby," Eliana said gently. He nodded. "Today's the day." She sat beside him, running her hand over his curls. "Yes, and I'll be with you every moment." His voice came out in a tiny whisper. "Will I be okay?" Eliana pulled him close, kissing the top of his head. "Yes, sweetheart. You'll feel tired, but the doctors know exactly what to do. They'll take good care of you, and I'll hold your hand until they say, 'I can't anymore.'" He leaned into her, letting out a long breath. "Okay." His sister stirred awake on the other side of the room, rubbing her eyes. "Are we going now?" "Soon," Eliana said softly. "Let's get ready." The hospital was quieter than usual. Early morning quiet, when the halls felt colder and the lights seemed harsher. Wesley was already there, pacing near the waiting room entrance. When he saw them, he stopped immediately. His eyes locked onto her son, then onto Eliana. He exhaled shakily. "Thank you for coming early." Her son managed a small, brave smile. Wesley lowered himself to eye level. "Hey," he said gently, "I'm really proud of you." The boy shrugged, trying not to blush. "I just want her to get better." Wesley swallowed hard. "You're doing something incredible today. Something people never forget." Her daughter tugged at Wesley's sleeve. "Can we see her first?" He nodded. Of course. Mira's room was warm, with soft lights. She was sitting up this time, coloring slowly, her bunny tucked beside her. When she saw the twins, her face lit up instantly. "You came." Her daughter hurried to her side. "I brought your flower back. It didn't wilt yet." Mira giggled. "Good?" Her son stepped forward. Today's the day they help you." Mira nodded quietly. "Are you scared?" "A little." "Me too," she said. They looked at each other. Two children trying to be brave for reasons no child should have to face. Eliana's heart tightened at the sight. Wesley stood near the foot of the bed, watching with an aching tenderness he didn't bother trying to hide. His hand brushed lightly against Eliana's arm as he stepped aside to give the children space. The touch wasn't intentional, but it lingered afterward. Eliana didn't move away. She didn't lean in either. She breathed. Slowly, carefully, Dr. Lee entered with a warm smile. "Good morning, everyone. Let's walk through everything one more time so the children feel safe." Her son nodded, gripping his dinosaur. Dr. Lee knelt to his level. "You're going to be in a comfortable room. We'll give you medicine to help you relax. You won't feel the donation. When you wake up, you might be tired, but that's normal." "What about Mira?" her daughter asked. "She'll get the transplant right afterward," Dr. Lee explained. "We'll monitor her closely." Her son straightened his shoulders with a seriousness that made Wesley's eyes glisten. "Okay, I'm ready." Eliana took his hand, squeezing it. "I'm proud." "Oh." The boy looked at Wesley next, seeking something. Maybe reassurance he didn't know how to ask for. Wesley understood. He placed a hand over his heart. "I'll be right outside, waiting for you, thinking about you the whole time." And for the first time, her son smiled at him with genuine warmth. As they walked toward the surgical prep area, the hospital lights reflected off the polished floors. The air felt too cold, too sterile. Eliana walked on her son's right side, holding his hand tightly. Wesley stayed on his left, close but not overbearing, matching the child's pace step for step. Before they reached the double doors, her daughter ran up and hugged her brother tightly. "You're gonna do great." He hugged back. "Take care, Mira, while I'm gone." "I will," she promised. Dr. Lee gave Eliana a gentle nod. "We'll take good care." "Oh." Her son looked up at her, eyes wide but brave. "You'll be right here every second," she whispered. Then the doors opened. He disappeared behind them. Eliana stood still for a long moment, her hand pressed against the glass panel, watching until she couldn't see him anymore. Wesley stepped beside her, voice quiet. "He'll be okay." She didn't speak. Fear had tightened her throat. Wesley hesitated before gently placing his hand over hers on the glass. She didn't pull away. Her breath trembled. "He's never done anything like this. Not surgery. Not something so big." "I know," Wesley whispered, "but he's strong. Stronger than I ever was at his age." She blinked hard, tears forming. "I hate waiting." "Me too." For several minutes, they stood together in silence, two parents connected by love, guilt, and fear, holding on to the only comfort they could find, each other's presence. Back in the waiting room, Eliana finally sat down, head in her hands. Her heart pounded, each minute stretching into something unbearable. Wesley sat beside her, but not too close. Close enough to offer support, far enough to respect her space. After a long silence, he spoke. "Eliana, I need to say something." She lifted her head slowly. "I know I failed you," he said quietly. "I know I walked away when you needed me. But these past days, watching you with the twins, watching the twins with Mira, I see the family we could have been, and it hurts." Eliana's eyes softened, not with forgiveness, but with honesty. "It hurt me, too. For a long time, I still love you." The words slipped out, raw and unpolished. His voice trembled, as if the confession surprised even him. Eliana inhaled sharply. Wesley continued, eyes locked on hers. "Not the way I did back then. Not as a dream or an idea, but as a grown man who understands what he lost. As someone who sees your strength now and knows exactly what he walked away from." Her breath quivered, but she didn't speak. "I'm not asking for anything," he added. "I just needed you to know. Today showed me something, that maybe what broke us doesn't have to stay broken forever." Eliana looked away, struggling to steady herself. "Wesley, this isn't the moment for that conversation." "I know," he whispered, "but it's the moment when I finally understood it." Her voice was low but gentle. "Right now, all that matters is the children." "Yes," he said softly, "but I needed to be honest." She felt the truth of that in her chest. Unexpected, warm, frightening. Before she could respond, Dr. Lee appeared at the doorway, his expression unreadable. Eliana stood immediately, Wesley rising beside her. "How is he?" she asked, voice trembling. Dr. Lee stepped closer. "The procedure went smoothly." Eliana exhaled sharply, covering her mouth. "But," Dr. Lee continued, "we won't know how Mira responds until the next several hours. Maybe days." Her heart lurched. "So for now," Dr. Lee said gently, "we wait." Eliana closed her eyes. Wesley reached for her hand. This time, she didn't hesitate. She held it, not out of romance, not out of forgiveness, but because fear was heavy and hope was fragile, and neither of them wanted to face the next hours alone. The first days after the transplant unfolded slowly, carrying a mix of relief, fear, and a quiet hope. None of them dared to speak too loudly. The hospital felt different now. The air was no longer as heavy as before the procedure, though worry still lingered around every corner. Instead of urgency, there was a steady rhythm of careful monitoring, soft footsteps, gentle conversations, and the cautious optimism of a family learning how to breathe again. Mira slept more than usual at first, her small body working tirelessly to adjust to the new marrow working its way into her system. Dr. Lee explained that this period, these early days, were both delicate and essential. They had to watch her numbers, her energy, her color, and any tiny sign that her body was accepting the transplant. Wesley stayed in her room almost constantly. He sat in a chair beside her bed, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees whenever she stirred. Sometimes he held her hand even while she slept, tracing little circles on the back of it with his thumb, as if assuring her silently that he was right there. Eliana visited often, balancing her time between the twins' recovery room and Mira's. She didn't intrude, but she was present, a steady, calming force. Wesley would glance up whenever she entered, and each time, his expression softened despite the exhaustion etched into his features. The twins were adjusting well. Her son, still tender in his lower back, walked slowly, but insisted on visiting Mira twice a day. He never went in empty-handed. Sometimes he brought stickers, sometimes a comic, sometimes just a smile. Their daughter was just as devoted, often sitting beside Mira's bed, humming soft little melodies she made up on the spot. One afternoon, 3 days after the transplant, the twins sat on either side of Mira's bed. Mira had enough energy to stay awake for longer stretches, though she still drifted off quickly. Her hair lay gently around her face, her cheeks a shade warmer than they had been before. Eliana watched the scene from a spot near the door, arms loosely crossed, a tender ache in her chest. "Do you want me to read another page?" her son asked, holding the book he'd brought. A simple chapter book he loved. Mira nodded, weakly. "Just one more," she murmured, with a tiny smile. He read aloud, voice soft but steady. His sister occasionally chimed in with little warnings like, "Don't go too fast or hold the book so she can see the picture," and Mira giggled each time, the sound faint but undeniably joyful. Eliana glanced at Wesley. He wasn't watching the book. He was watching the children, all three of them, as if he couldn't believe they were truly here together. His gaze held a depth of gratitude she hadn't seen from him before. When the reading session ended and the twins were led back to the pediatric lounge for a snack break, Wesley remained seated beside Mira. Eliana moved into the room and leaned lightly against the wall, arms folding across her chest, more out of habit than defensiveness. The quiet stretched between them, but it wasn't sharp like it once had been. It felt reflective. "How's she doing?" Eliana asked softly. Wesley looked over at her, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "She's stronger today." Dr. Lee said her counts looked promising. "Still early, but it's the first good news we've had in months." His voice trembled with restrained emotion. Eliana nodded. "She looks better." Her eyes, they're brighter. He swallowed and looked back at his daughter, his voice lowering. "I don't think I've ever felt this kind of relief and fear at the same time. "You're allowed to feel both," she replied gently. They stood in the quiet, both watching Mira drift into another nap. Somewhere down the hall, the twins' laughter echoed faintly. The sound wrapped around Eliana like warmth, reminding her that children often understood life better than adults did. They didn't overthink, didn't hold grudges, didn't cling to pain the way grown people did. After a moment, Wesley turned toward her, more fully. He looked tired, tired in his eyes, tired in his posture, tired in the sort of way that came from emotional weight more than physical exhaustion. "Eliana," he began, voice steady but quiet, "I need to tell you something, and I need to say it clearly, without rushing through it or hiding behind excuses." She lifted her chin slightly. She didn't interrupt. She simply listened. "I owe you a real apology," he continued, "not just for leaving, but for everything that led up to that, for not supporting you, for letting fear run my life, for not being the husband you needed, or the father our children deserved." Eliana's eyes flickered with emotion, but she remained still. Wesley kept going, each sentence shaped with sincerity. "I was young, but that doesn't excuse anything. I was overwhelmed, but that doesn't excuse anything either. I thought I was protecting you by stepping away from what I believed I couldn't handle. I told myself that lie until it became comfortable. And that comfort cost all of us years we can't get back." His hands pressed together, as though trying to steady himself. "You carried everything alone. You raised 2 incredible children without any help from me. You struggled, and I wasn't there. And when I think about that..." His voice cracked, and he paused to breathe. "Breaks something in me?" Eliana's eyes softened a little. "Wesley, no," he said calmly, shaking his head. "Let me finish, please." She nodded gently, letting him speak. "I'm sorry for walking away. I'm sorry for staying away. And I'm sorry for every moment you cried, or felt abandoned, or questioned whether you were enough. You were more than enough. I was the one who fell short." A long breath escaped him, as though he'd been holding it for years. "I know saying sorry doesn't fix the past. I know it doesn't erase what happened. But I want you to know that I mean it with everything in me. And I want to earn a place in the lives of our children, however long that takes. Not out of guilt, but out of love." The silence that followed felt thick with truth, not discomfort. Eliana's chest tightened at the weight of his words. They had waited nearly a decade to be spoken. She stepped closer, her voice gentle but honest. "Thank you for saying that. I needed to hear it. And I think you needed to say it." His shoulders slumped in quiet relief. She continued, her tone steady. "I can't pretend everything is fine now. Healing takes time. But I can admit this much. You being here, present, caring for the kids and for Mira. It shows me you're not the same man who left." A small, hopeful smile touched Wesley's lips, faint but real. Eliana added, "Let's just take everything one day at a time. No pressure, no rushing. Just steady steps." He nodded, voice low. "One day at a time." Just then, Mira stirred and whispered, "Daddy." Wesley turned immediately, brushing her hair from her forehead. "I'm right here, Pumpkin." Eliana watched him, the tenderness, the devotion, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. Not everything was fixed, but something had undeniably changed. Outside the room, she could hear the twins returning from the lounge, their footsteps quick and eager. Their laughter floated down the corridor, mingling with the soft beeping of medical monitors and the gentle hum of hospital life. A family was taking shape, carefully, slowly, but beautifully. This time wasn't breaking apart. It was coming together. The next week unfolded with a calmness none of them had expected. Not an absence of worry. Mira still had to be monitored closely, but a softness, a gentle rhythm that came from everyone finally breathing again. Mira's numbers were improving. Her strength was returning little by little, and with each new morning, the atmosphere in her hospital room grew warmer. The children were the heart of that warmth. Every day after school, the twins arrived with their backpacks bouncing, and their voices carrying excitement down the hallway. Mira could recognize their footsteps now. She'd lift her head the moment she heard them coming, eyes brightening in a way that made the nurses smile whenever they passed by the door. One afternoon, the twins walked in, holding a paper bag between them, a bag that crinkled loudly as they carefully set it on the rolling bedside table. "What's this?" Mira asked, already smiling, as her sister hopped onto the bed beside her. "A surprise," the girl answered confidently. "We brought stuff so you don't get bored." Her brother leaned over, pulling item after item from the bag. "We made a game," he announced proudly. "It's like a guessing game, but with pictures and, tiny clues." Mira laughed softly. "You made your own game." "Yep, because the hospital doesn't have anything like it, and you can play while sitting." Eliana watched from beside the window, arms loosely folded, her heart swelling at the sight. Wesley sat nearby, his body angled forward with that focused attention he brought to every moment involving the kids. The twins spread out their homemade cards, each one drawn by hand, filled with little shapes, symbols, or simple drawings. Some looked like animals, others like everyday objects, and a few were scribbles only children could understand. The rules were simple. Mira guessed what each card represented and earned a point for every correct answer. The twins, already competitive with each other, insisted on joining the game too, to make it fair. "Okay," her brother said, holding up the first card. "What's this one?" Mira squinted, smiling. "That a horse." "No," both twins said at once, though they were grinning. Her sister tapped the card. "It's a dog. See? The tail is smaller." Mira tilted her head. "I thought that was a cat's tail." "You're both wrong," her brother announced dramatically. "It's a dog running." He pointed to a crooked line under the card. "This is the sidewalk." Mira burst into laughter. "It looks like a cloud." The randomness of the drawings made everything funnier. Soon the room filled with giggles. Light, innocent, healing laughter. Wesley caught Eliana's eyes in the middle of it. They shared a small smile, the kind that came naturally, without hesitation. Neither of them spoke, but it was clear they recognized the same thing. The children were weaving something together, something even the adults couldn't have done alone. Later that evening, as the kids played quietly at Mira's bedside, Eliana stepped into the hallway for a moment to refill her water bottle. Wesley followed, not to crowd her, but because he needed air too. The hallway was quiet, the soft glow of overhead lights washing everything in calm tones. Wesley leaned against the wall, exhaling a breath that sounded like he'd been carrying it all day. "It feels different now," he said softly. "Like something is settling." Eliana nodded, keeping her tone gentle. "The kids. They make it easy to remember the good instead of the hurt." He smiled faintly. "They do. I look at them, and I see everything I missed. But I also feel something else." He paused. "Possibility?" Eliana didn't respond immediately. She took a sip of water, letting the word settle between them. Then she said quietly, "Possibility works only if people are willing to put in the work." "I know," he agreed. "I am." He swallowed. "For them, for Mira, and for you." She didn't look away. Her expression didn't close off. If anything, it softened more. "I'm not rushing anything," he added. "I just want to be honest with you. And patient." A warm wave rose in her chest. She wasn't ready to hand her heart over the way she had years ago, not without caution, but she couldn't ignore that Wesley's presence didn't hurt the way it once did. Instead, it felt grounding now, present, real. Before she could reply, the sound of laughter bubbled from Mira's room, the kind of laughter that bounced off walls and demanded attention. Eliana turned her head, smiling instinctively. "What are they doing now?" she murmured. Wesley chuckled. "Knowing them? Creating chaos." They stepped back inside together. The twins had taken several hospital gloves, blown them up, and drawn faces on them. Each glove now had a name. Names created by the kids, not new character names in the story, such as Mr. Puffy, Nurse Wiggles, and Captain Chubby. They were playing some kind of puppet show around Mira's bed. Mira clapped when she saw Wesley and Eliana return. "Look, they're dancing." Her brother, holding one glove by the wrist, made exaggerated, bouncy movements. Captain Chubby says, "You should drink your juice, or he will do this." He shook the glove wildly until all three children burst into giggles again. Mira leaned back, laughter giving her color she hadn't had in weeks. This pure joy, this innocent energy, wrapped itself around the room so completely that even the nurses passing by paused to smile at the scene. Eliana walked closer to the bed, brushing a loose curl behind Mira's ear. "You're looking stronger today." "I feel stronger," Mira said, proudly. "They make me laugh. Laughing helps." Eliana kissed her forehead, and Wesley watched the gentle moment with a quiet reverence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't push himself into it. He simply existed beside them, with a tenderness that felt new, or perhaps long overdue. As evening approached, The twins settled down to color with Mira, each child working on a corner of the same sheet of paper. Their heads nearly touched as they filled the page with bright crayons and little doodles that overlapped and blended. "They're becoming their own trio," Eliana said quietly. Wesley nodded. "It's incredible, isn't it? Children don't think about the past. They don't calculate risk. They don't get stuck in pride." His voice lowered. "They just choose love." Eliana looked at him. He met her gaze with a sincerity that warmed her more than she expected. "You're trying," she said in a low tone. "And the kids see it. It too." A brief silence passed. Soft, meaningful. Then their daughter called from the bed. "Mom, Wesley, look, we drew us." The two adults approached the bed. The drawing showed stick figures, 4 children in colorful scribbles, and 2 taller figures holding hands. Eliana and Wesley exchanged a startled glance. The twins looked proud of their artwork, not realizing the drawing had tugged hard at 2 adult hearts. Mira pointed at the tallest figures. "This one's you," she told Eliana. "This is your friend." The twins giggled. "He's not her friend," her brother blurted out. "He's our dad." Eliana's breath caught. Wesley's eyes softened instantly. "Oh," Mira murmured, eyes widening. "That makes sense." There was no judgment, no confusion, only acceptance. Kids were simple that way. They followed the love they saw. Eliana felt her throat tighten, her heart swelling with a slow, cautious warmth. She could feel Wesley standing close beside her, his shoulder brushing hers gently. Just a touch, just a moment, but it stirred something deep and familiar within her. Something she thought she had buried long ago. Later, when the kids drifted into tired giggles and yawns, Eliana helped tuck Mira back under her blanket. The twins packed up their crayons, still arguing about which glove puppet was the funniest. Wesley stood near the window, watching Eliana as she smoothed Mira's sheets, checked her 4-line, and whispered something soft that made the girl relax instantly. He admired her in a way that went beyond attraction. It was respect, gratitude, and an ache for the years he had lost. She had always been steady, always gentle, always strong. When she finished, Eliana turned. Wesley stepped closer, not crowding her, just near enough to speak softly. "You're incredible with her," he said. Eliana shook her head lightly. "I'm doing what any mother would do, but she's not just any child to you," he reminded her gently. "You've loved her from the moment you saw her. I can tell." Eliana exhaled slowly, her voice quiet. She didn't ask for any of this. None of the children did. But they're finding each other. They're making their own version of family. Wesley nodded. "Maybe they're reminding us how to do it too." Their eyes met again. This time, the moment lingered. Not rushed, not forced. Just 2 people standing close enough to feel something shift inside them. Not romance rushed or dramatized, but warmth connection, understanding, a beginning. And they both felt it, even if neither said a word. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds in soft, steady lines, the kind of warm glow that reminded everyone inside the hospital that life outside continued, bright and full. But today, sunlight didn't feel distant. It felt like a sign. Dr. Lee stepped into Mira's room with a smile that spoke before he did. Wesley stood immediately. Eliana rose from the chair, where she'd been helping Mira braid a small section of her hair. The twins, who had been drawing on the windows with wipe-off markers, turned eagerly. "I have great news," Dr. Lee said. 4 little shoulders straightened. 2 adult hearts braced. Mira's numbers look strong. Stronger than we hoped for at this stage. Her body is responding beautifully. Wesley covered his mouth, eyes filling. Mira gasped softly, pressing her hands together. Eliana let out a breath. She felt like she'd been holding for weeks. Dr. Lee continued warmly. "If she continues improving through the weekend, we can start preparing her discharge plan." "What does that mean?" Mira whispered. "It means," Dr. Lee said gently, "you're going home soon." Mira's face bloomed into a smile so bright it tugged tears straight from Wesley's eyes. She reached out for him, and he gathered her gently, mindful of every line and bandage, holding her in a way that said he'd never take moments like this for granted again. Eliana stood nearby, watching father and daughter embrace. Her chest tightened. Not with sorrow this time, but with something warmer. Gratitude, relief, the tiniest spark of quiet hope. The twins hurried to the bed. "You can really come home?" her daughter asked, climbing onto the mattress. Mira nodded quickly. "Yes, Dr. Lee said I can, if I keep getting better." Her son grinned, pointing at himself. "See? That's because of me." Mira giggled. "I know. You're my hero." He puffed out his chest. "Well, yeah." They all laughed, a real, full sound that wrapped around the room like an embrace. A nurse arrived with a packet of instructions, medication schedules, and follow-up appointments. While Wesley reviewed the papers carefully, Eliana helped Mira walk slowly down the hallway, for the first time since the procedure. Mira held her hand, steps small and cautious, but determined. The twins followed them like little bodyguards, each offering unnecessary but adorable suggestions. "Hold the rail, just in case. Walk slow, like super slow. I'll catch you if you fall." Mira giggled the whole way, her tiredness clear, but her joy stronger. When she paused to rest, she leaned against Eliana's side, looking up thoughtfully. "Eliana?" "Yes, sweetheart? When I come home, can your kids play with me more?" Eliana brushed her hair gently. "Of course. They would love that." "Good," Mira whispered, "because they make everything feel less scary." Eliana swallowed, emotion thickening her voice. "I'm glad they help, baby. Really glad." Behind them, Wesley watched, admiration heavy in his gaze, layered with something tender that grew every time he saw Eliana comfort a child who wasn't even hers by blood, but loved her as if she were. 3 days later, Dr. Lee walked into the room with final confirmation. "Are you ready to go home, Mira?" Mira nodded eagerly, already wearing the soft pink hoodie Eliana had bought her earlier that morning. Wesley gathered her belongings: stuffed animals, cards the twins made, the daisy that hadn't survived, but was still tucked lovingly in her bag, everything that marked this journey. Eliana packed the blankets and little trinkets the nurses had given Mira. The twins held hands, bouncing lightly, thrilled and impatient. When they stepped outside those hospital doors, sunlight touched Mira's face fully for the first time in weeks. She blinked, adjusting, then broke into the purest smile. "It feels warm," she whispered. Her daughter grabbed her hand. "That's because you're better now," her son added. "The sun knows." Eliana laughed softly. "The sun knows? Really?" He shrugged with confidence. "Yep, it knows everything." Mira squeezed his hand. "I think so, too." Wesley stood beside them, watching the 3 children, their closeness, their natural affection, and knew that something irreversible had happened. They were family now, the kind that didn't depend on shared DNA, but on shared moments, shared healing, shared joy. The kind of family he once ran from was now ready to fight for every day. They decided, completely unplanned, to eat together as a family that evening. Not at a restaurant, not anywhere fancy, just at Eliana's house, where the twins felt comfortable and where Mira's recovery could be supported without stress. Wesley offered to bring dinner. He arrived with bags full of comfort food: baked chicken, mac and cheese, green beans, rolls, and a small cheesecake the twins nearly cheered over. The kitchen, usually calm, buzzed with happy energy. Mira sat at the table, coloring quietly, while the twins fussed over which plate she should use. Eliana set out cups, refilled drinks, directed traffic. Wesley helped warm the food and set the table, glancing often at Eliana in moments that weren't rushed or awkward, but gentle and appreciative. When everyone finally sat down, the table looked full, not just with food, but with presence, with life, with second chances. Mira carefully lifted her fork, her hand shaking just slightly. "I feel like this is the best day." Her son nodded. "It is, because you get to eat real food again," her daughter chimed in. "And because we're together." Wesley looked at Eliana across the table. She held his gaze, and something warm and steady passed between them. Silent, but unmistakable. After dinner, the kids sprawled across the living room floor, creating another drawing together. This time a house with a big yard, 3 kids running, and 2 tall figures standing close. Eliana watched over them from the couch. Wesley walked over slowly, sitting beside her with a respectful space between them. Not too far, not too close, just right. For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of everything they'd gone through, everything they were still healing, everything that was beginning to bloom. Finally, Wesley said softly, "Thank you for tonight, for letting us come, for letting Mira feel normal again." Eliana turned her head slightly. She deserves normal. They all do. He exhaled. I want this, all of this, to be something I never take for granted again. She held his gaze, searching for sincerity, and found nothing but truth. We can move forward, Eliana said gently, but slowly, carefully. I have to protect the kids and myself. I know, he answered, and I want to move slowly. I want to earn whatever comes next. I'm not going anywhere this time. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with cautious hope. She nodded. Then we'll see where this goes. Wesley smiled softly. A real smile. The kids ran over, interrupting the moment, as children always do, holding up the drawing proudly. Look, Mira said excitedly. We drew us. Eliana smiled, her voice warm. It's beautiful, Wesley added softly. It looks like a beginning. And all three kids nodded in agreement. The simplest truth spoken through their joy. A family not pieced together, not forced, but grown from forgiveness, love, healing, and the courage to choose each other again. Life has a way of breaking us in places we never expected, only to show us that love can grow back stronger in the spaces repaired with honesty, grace, and second chances. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need a reminder that healing is possible, and that love, when chosen with intention, can create the kind of family that changes everything.